Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. One of two this week, you lucky lot. For those of you who haven't tuned in before, welcome. If you tuned in before, then you know that my name's Rich and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, and we can be found on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram predominantly. Search for the Hard Compound on any of those, and come and enjoy us sharing a love of motorsport with you. That's the only reason we're here. We put out 3 written articles a day on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter in the morning, lunchtime, and evening here in the UK. These take the form of race reviews, race previews, throwbacks, birthdays, livery unveils, anything controversial that's going on. Who doesn't love that? And just some of our favourite photos and all kinds of motorsport goodness. Anything we can shake a stick at, really. Yeah, come along and join us. We cover everything from F1 to IndyCar, touring cars, bikes, rallying, supercars, NASCAR, single seaters, anything we can think of. So yeah, come and join us. In case you hadn't noticed, we also do live video interviews just like this one. And just like this one, these go out on our Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel, which is at the Hard Compound 2310. Not sure why those numbers are there, but that's what we were given. They can be found in the live section on YouTube and in the video section on Facebook afterwards. They're automatically saved. And we've had some fantastic guests on for a chat from across the motorsport spectrum. Legends such as Mr. Mario Andretti with Mr. Jackie X, John Watson, Chip Ganassi, Hans Stuck. If you're a fan of the touring cars, we've had Jason Plato on, Steve Soper, John Cleland, Ivan Muller, Anthony Reid, Tom Coronel, Fabrizio Giovanardi, Andy Prio, Gabriele Tarquini, etc., etc. We've had the likes of Mr. Derek Warwick, Stefan Johansson, Mark Blundell, Eddie Cheever, Derek Daly, Connor Daly. We've had, well, more than I can shake a stick at, to be honest. Ari Landijk, Carl Wendling, and Mark Shearer, Emanuele Perot, Jan Maria Bruni, Martin Donnelly, Willie T. Ribbs, Danny Sullivan, and many, many others, including some people from the TOCA package, most of the British Touring Car Grid, the Mini Challenge. We've had Louise Goodman on for a chat, Lynn St. James, and we've had the likes of Sabra Cook and Carrie Schreiner, who have raced in W Series and F1 Academy. Speaking of F1 Academy, brings us on to our guest this evening. She was the youngest driver to race in the inaugural season last year. And she's currently competing in the British F4 Championship with JHR Developments, someone I've been keeping an eye on for the last couple of years. And she's done an awful lot in a short space of time. So we're going to bring her in and have a chat about it all. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to one of the best talents to come out of the UK in the last few years, Miss Chloe Chong.
Hi there, nice to meet you.
Hi there, Chloe, how are you?
Yeah, feeling good. Excited to answer some good questions on motorsport today.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on and having a chat. Firstly, apologies for grabbing you at Thruxton a few weeks ago. I don't like ambushing people, but thank you very much for your time and for coming on. Yeah, I really appreciate you sparing some time this evening.
It's my pleasure. I'm really excited.
Great stuff. Fantastic. First, I just want to turn my attention to the comment section. Guys, whichever platform you're tuning in on, just put some comments or questions or chat amongst yourselves if you so wish. In the comment section, we'll see them in real time over on the side of the screen here. Yeah, we hope to have some questions and any comments, and we'll try and work them in as best we can, as long as the technology is working. Right, okay, time to crack on, I think. Firstly, you're off to Zandvoort next weekend, aren't you? For the it's the first ever British F4 round there, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Zandvoort's going to be really exciting. It's the first race abroad in a long time for British F4. And I think, tying in the fact that, there's so many firsts in this series, I think it's going to be another really exciting race with a lot of competitive people competing in it, and should be good, especially with the bank corners and the physical aspect really coming into play.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about that physical aspect just off camera before we started. We'll touch on that a bit later, and how you're better prepared perhaps this year than you were last year. And I don't mean that in a bad way, of course. And hopefully we're going to get some good weather to go racing in, because it's been a bit sketchy in the UK this so far this season, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely been colder than I expected, and the warmest race was actually in May, so it was a bit interesting to see that. I'm really excited to go to Zandvoort because I think again it's going to be quite windy, so that factor comes into play, but also yeah, the weather can change quite quickly, but hopefully, fingers crossed, it looks like it was going to be dry, so should be nice and warm and sunny, and hopefully we'll have some good fans and good vibes at the track.
Yeah, fingers crossed, for sure. It's certainly a cool town, right on the sand dunes there, and right on the seafront. It's a cool place to be, so hopefully everyone will get right behind it, and give you all some support, which would be superb. Um, okay, right. I guess what I like to do though is start right at the very start, which for you isn't that long ago, which is amazing because you've crammed in an awful lot. Where did your interest in motorsport come from?
It genuinely came from just watching the Formula One races on the weekend. I wouldn't say I was born into a motorsport family, that would be a lie. My dad enjoyed some rental karting, some Club 100 karting here and there. Um, but yeah, he has always found passion in watching Formula One for a really long time, since before I was born. And yeah, being the eldest child at that point, it was just natural that I'd watch it with my parents. And yeah, I just grew up around it and really enjoyed the thrill of it all, and overtakes, and also watching Hamilton. I think I've been a fan of his for a really long time, and I really like to say that he was the one that inspired me to race. It's not I would say it's not normal to see someone that's slightly different racing in Formula One, and I think at that point the majority of people, weren't ethnic ethnic minorities. So it was nice to have that as a female and also as a Chinese person, seeing someone like Lewis racing. So yeah, I think he brought me into the sport, and I actually started karting at Butmore Park, and I remember my dad telling me, this is where Lewis started. So I've kind of followed my journey, with Lewis by my side, I'd say, like kind of doing a parallel of what he did. Obviously, he's a massive talent, so it's very hard to follow exactly in his footsteps, but I try my best.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean that's a high bar to be looking at, of course, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But as you say, I mean, even before he'd got in a car in F1, Lewis had kind of broken the mold, broken the stereotype of what everyone would perceive an F1 driver, to be or to look like. And I think that's something pretty amazing to have done even before he went racing. And then as soon as he did go racing, it all went rather well. So yeah, I mean, so you got taken down to Buckmore Park, excellent kart track, and it's so well known. So many races have come through there and have raced there. Um, Obviously, you mentioned that you grew up watching the racing. When did you first start to think I'd like to have a go, and when did you start pestering your dad to have a go?
I'd say it's like the age of like 4 or 5. Butmore, their minimum age was 6 at the time, so I had to wait until just after my 6th birthday. It was probably a few months, if not a year and a bit, until I was actually allowed to go in a cart. But ever since I went in, we kept coming back to the rental carts, learning a bit more. There were some really good instructors at the like the junior level, the Bambino, we like to call it, engine class. So yeah, I learned a lot about Moore Park, and I have them to thank for like all the stuff that I picked up in the first 2 years of my racing.
Yeah, which is fantastic, and it's great to hear that you were there and you were like going down the rental cart, almost the arrive and drive um, style, because there's so many who have gone down that route, and there's plenty of others who have had the financial backing to say, right, I want to go karting. Let's give it a couple of goes, and then we'll go and buy one, and that'll be the route in. That wasn't the case with you at all, was it?
Yeah, I mean it's quite funny because I still feel like motorsport is very closed off. A lot of the drivers, that I'm racing with this year, kind of went through the owner driver path, where at that point I was still, just going back and forth, arriving and driving at Butmore Park's own go karts. And my parents, especially coming from a very humble background, they had to work a lot to get to where they are, and I'm very grateful to have the backing of my parents to help me out, especially with the financial stuff. To the point that I have been, unfortunately, it gets a lot more expensive from here, so we're really looking for financial support in the future. But for them, it was always like, you got to prove yourself to be able to, you know, kind of justify the backing that you're putting in. So we started in rental carts. We did it for 4 years, and it is quite interesting, seeing so many people from so many different backgrounds. But I think it's kind of, I'd say, overlooked the fact that there are lots of really really talented people coming from that rental cart kind of background, and it's really it would really be quite nice to see in the future, a lot more drivers coming from team sports or Butmore Parks of the UK or Daytona into Formula racing. But unfortunately, it's just the prices are so high that it makes it really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And as you say, it'd be lovely because because karting is so accessible to people. As you say, you can go to places like Team Sport. Other karting places are available. You can go there and have a race, and you can do that. But so as things start to get more serious and you get more competitive and you want to progress, that's where the money comes in. And as you said, as you touched on there, you had 4 years of just almost like arrive and drive or doing the rental card, and you worked your way up. Was it went through like the Junior Max and the British Kart Championships and the X30 and things like that? And I guess when you start having some success and some good results, that kind of feeds you a bit more, and you think, I want more of this, and that's when the bug bites, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an up and down journey for me and my family. I actually won a scholarship in the Bambino karts to go and race an owner driver kart with
Okay.
a little race team at the age of 8. So I did that, and actually I did get my own go kart at the age of, I think, 8 and a bit, after we did a couple test days with that team. But yeah, after a year, my parents were like, the costs are too high, the time commitment's too high, and we just really need to take a break because my little brother and sister were just born. So again, we spent 2 more years in the rental karting at Butmore Park in their junior club series, and at the end of 2019 we finally found kind of enough time to go into it a lot more, and kind of commit more to it. So it was a long wait, but we went little by little. We entered little club rounds at our local track lid kart circuit, and it just kind of went from there. I think I won the winter championship one year, and I came fourth in the Kent championship. So yeah, after that it was just the case of competing. The British Championship was something that we always looked quite highly upon, but also we didn't have much budget to do all the testing that all the big teams were doing. But my dad wasn't really able to mechanic because he had a heart problem, so we had to go with the team and let them mechanic for me. But it meant that we couldn't do all the test days, so we just show up at the rounds and hope for the best. And yeah, we finished in ninth in the British Championship in my first year, so it was kind of a sign that we should keep going, and went from there. But again, with karting, it's so unpredictable, especially at that high level, at that owner driver level, because unfortunately money is still at play, and whoever has the best engines will generally finish quite close to the top, as well as the most test days. So it was a bit difficult to kind of overcome those hurdles and kind of accept that there wasn't much that I could do to put myself on that even playing field, because truth is, even in karting, it wasn't as even as we'd like it. But the results came into play. We got a good result here and there, and it kind of just went all into that. And soon after, we got the call to join the FIA Girls on Track program, and yeah, my life changed after that.
Yeah, didn't it just? I mean, just on that, I mean, that's the thing. When you're in that situation where you haven't got the financial backing, the time to go testing and all that kind of thing, that's where the results really count. And if you can be in that small team and getting yourself noticed through results, that's gonna shout almost as loud as the finances, isn't it? And that's obviously what you did. Um, I heard that you were going to quit karting at some point the just because of the cost involved and the time and everything. I mean, was that kind of close? Was it, how kind of close were you to?
Yeah, well, I'd say beginning of 2023 close was where it was, and I don't think
Wow.
if I joined F1 Academy, last year, I would be be here at all. it was kind of a commitment. In 2023, I was doing my GCSEs that year. I wanted to take my A levels, and it was just, full focus was going into school and getting into a good uni. So um, me and my parents, we kind of decided that racing would take, kind of a back foot. We would do one more year of racing and go-karting, and then call it end of day, and focus on my future career, in the outside world, rather than put all the finances into racing. And also because we didn't have enough money to compete in Formula 4, so it wasn't really, there was no questions asked by me. It was kind of like a given. But yeah, the F1 Academy call changed everything, because they give a really good subsidy towards the racing costs for the year, and obviously working with the teams such as Prema Racing, it wasn't something that we could turn down. So my parents sacrificed a lot to put me into that position, and it's something that I will always be grateful for, and I think it was an experience of a lifetime, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, when you get into that point, obviously, you're just a normal, was a normal girl doing normal things with school and everything, and understandably, you're going to go down that route. The Girls on Track thing, the FIA Girls on Track program. How did that come about? And I mean, you kind of touched about opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, that was something, I guess, that you were never going to say no to as soon as the opportunity came up.
Again, in that experience, I almost turned it down. Funnily enough,
Really?
I was, I was actually playing hockey at the time in South Africa, with my school, and yeah, joining that program would have meant that I had to leave the tour quite early. So I was having a really good time out there. We were winning lots of matches, and I genuinely really wanted to stay, because again, it was a given that I wouldn't be able to compete at a high level, wouldn't be able to pursue my dreams just because of the sheer financial costs. So I was kind of like, to my parents, is it really worth it, to leave something that I'm doing really well, which is playing hockey in South Africa, to go and do this competition where, even if, I do well, there's probably not a good chance of me winning, because I haven't had any single CC experience. And even if I won, like, I don't know if I'll be able to keep going with it. So it was kind of like that limbo, but my parents, may eventually like kind of force me to do it. And I have them to thank. Otherwise, again, I wouldn't be where I am today, because I genuinely was putting it off quite a bit.
I mean, it kind of sounds like one of those things where they almost lent on you and said, look, if you don't do this, you might regret it. So let's give it a go type thing. And am I right in thinking this was at Maranello?
Yeah, so the first stage of this competition was at Paul Ricard in France. It was karting with the Kart Republic team in OKJ karts. So it was my first time in OKJ karts. And then we had 2 more days in the Winfield F4 cars, which are the McGow old spec style F4 cars. And then we went to Maranello after being picked for the final, and that was in the new Tatus cars around the test track.
I mean, that's quite a jump, isn't it? Because I mean, you've only done karting, and that was your first time in those cars, and I guess you kind of took to it quite quickly, or as quickly as you could, because you impressed a few people there, and were you then put in touch with Prema, or how did the F1 Academy seat come up, and particularly with Prema, who are so well known?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a journey. I think what impressed them the most was my sheer pace in the go-karts. As I said, the financial kind of aspect of go-karting does mean that if you have the best engine, you can win. And I think in that moment, being put on that even playing field with all the other girls and being compared directly to all those girls in equal karts and equal engines, let's just say I was the fastest driver on track, and I was basically the reference driver when there was another Ferrari driver, Academy driver, being the reference. So I think they were very impressed by that pace. And in the cars, by no means I was anywhere near the quickest, but I think at the rate that I improved at, they saw, what I saw. They saw what I did in karting, and they kind of put the dots together and said, if she can do that in karting, and she's improving this rate in the cars, why can't she do it in Formula cars? And in some ways, that's really good to have, that aspect. But also, I feel like it was quite rushed. Again, being called up by Prema mid-February when the season was to start in March. in some ways it was a blessing, but also it was kind of a massive obstacle that I need to get over, because there was so much to do that I only had like 2 test days before the start of the F1 Academy season, and it was a lot to get through my brain when all the drivers had over a season of racing and testing under their belts. So again, it feels kind of like this year I'm still playing a bit of catch up, but um, it feels much more comfortable to be with a team that's prepared better, I'd say, for drivers just starting out. Prema's known for their winning, and that's for a reason. It's because all their drivers are capable of winning when they join the team. And I think that's often overlooked, is that I would say that other teams are much better at bringing drivers up straight from the beginning than Prema.
Yeah, sure. They kind of go for maybe the ones who have got some experience and can go and get the results straight off the bat. So I mean, I think, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, they took a bit of a chance on you when, because of the experience that you had or didn't have or whatever. Just quickly though, I mean, as a 16-year-old, when you get a call saying Prema want you to do F1 Academy in a month, I mean, what was your reaction? Because I know what my reaction would have been when I was 16 if I had that call. I'd have screamed and hit the roof and gone crazy. I mean, what was it like when that call came?
Well, actually, I was 15, and it was quite early in the morning. So, people that know me know that I'm not exactly a morning person. So,
Yeah,
my dad ran into my room at 6 a.m. Because the Prema was testing in Bahrain at that point. Um, so it was quite early that he got a call from them, and translated to me, and I had to process everything through my head, for a few minutes, just to get it all through my head. I was definitely, super happy, but also I was a bit mildly concerned. And I think as a female, that's one of the traits that we have, is that we tend to overthink things a lot. I think guys would have, as you said, jumped through the roof and been super, super excited. I obviously was really excited, but I was also thinking of, what's going to happen with my GCSEs, and what's going to happen with, my whole life, because I'll have to go to Italy for months on end, and, really commit my whole life towards this. There was a lot of questions being asked, but, after a couple of weeks, we sorted everything out, and it's probably been one of the best risky decisions that I've made.
yeah. I'll bet you have to take a risk sometimes. And I saw elsewhere that you had to drop pretty much all your GCSEs, didn't you, to go and commit to racing? Because you said that you can't do 50-50, you've got to commit to one or the other.
Yeah.
And you had to sacrifice all the usual stuff that people your age do to go all in. And I get the feeling that you're quite competitive in everything you do. And I guess if you want to do if you personally want to do something, you have to go all in. And I guess that's why it was such a big decision for you.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm one that, again, wants to do the best in everything that that I do. So school was quite a big thing for me. I was on track to get, eights and nines and all of my GCSEs. So I was kind of like, I've worked so hard for this. I've put in a lot of effort outside of school hours, and obviously in replacement of racing to get to that level academically. And now I have to throw it all away. But at the end of the day, it hasn't really affected me that much. I did one GCSE in the summer and the 2 compulsory maths and English in the winter. But I realized, it doesn't really matter. Like, universities don't really look at GCSE results, and it's mostly the A levels and predicted grades that get looked at most. So my focus is a lot on them at the present, but I think it wasn't probably worth all that time and effort overthinking, the outcomes of my GCSEs at that point.
Yeah, sure. And that's, I mean, we're always told you've got to do well in your GCSEs, and then when you get a bit older, you think, oh, actually, it's the A levels that count. Not to belittle GCSEs, kids, do them properly. Dig myself out of a hole there. And you're doing A levels now, and you're doing them. What's the word? Well, like we are now, you're doing it like remotely, aren't you? And you're going down that route, which is amazing, given the racing that you're doing as well. But yeah, just to go back to starting at Prema, when you first walked in the doors, I mean, was it one of those, wow, I'm doing this moment?
I think I was probably like too nervous to like really take in the full moment. I think, we had lunch with one of the team managers beforehand at the hotel. And he kind of, talked to us about how the team works, how I would work in the team, and how basically they plan on the year going. And yeah, we went to the factory, and I think, actually, that, when I was there, I think it was just, really nice to see all the cars, meet all the people. I wasn't really thinking about, oh, this is such an amazing team. I was kind of thinking, this is so big that I can't even think about the team. It's all about the experience, and taking in the most that I can from it. So I think that whole time, first time in the factory was just, I was kind of in awe, but also trying to remain professional, and trying to show them that I really like mean it, even though I'm a 15-year-old.
Yeah, which is a much different approach to a lot of 15-year-olds, I have to say, which is very good, because I think a lot of people would have just been absolutely buzzing. I'd have been buzzing at age 40, but um, and so you went in. You had two really good teammates last year. Obviously, there's like Bianca, who was on a similar kind of journey to you. Not too different in age. First real sort of big step into racing, and you had Marta Garcia, who has got plenty of experience. And I mean, those two must have been the ideal people to have alongside you.
Yeah, I think, both of them were really great teammates. We were all different experience levels, and I think that really helped each other out a lot, because there was a lot of data that we compared to, and we all had very different driving styles. So I think it was nice to, have that friendship both on and off the track. I think especially Marta's been quite a big mentor for me. We've had a lot of similar experiences through karting, and through, the first years in cars. She had quite a struggle, I think, for her first year in Formula 4, and
Mm.
it's probably something that I've kind of mirrored a bit this year. I feel like I probably haven't quite been able to get the best down myself yet. But it's always nice to have that person to lean on, to talk to, support as well, in terms of their own racing. I watch her Frecker races all the time, but also, she's great at giving advice, and kind of being there, because I feel like she's faced the same experiences before. So we really had quite a natural and amazing friendship last year. It's crazy to think about it, because as a 16-year-old, you never imagine a 23-year-old to be your best friend in racing. So it was quite a dynamic relationship, I'd say. But I'm truly grateful for the experiences that it's given me, and I've made a lifelong friend. So again, it's been amazing.
That's lovely to hear. That's great. Just got to show that age differences and things like that. As long as you're all into the same kind of thing and you've got the same goal, then you know, then it really doesn't matter. I also saw that she helped you with driving with a clutch. Was it with a rental car or somewhere? Was it the first round in Austria? Was it? She
Well,
was.
it was actually round three. As I
Was it
said,
round three?
Prema are very used to taking drivers that are ready to win. They've already had a lot of racing and testing experience, so they weren't exactly sure on how to teach me things. And I think they kind of expected me to know a lot of stuff that I hadn't even gone over, at all beforehand. So, race three at Barcelona, I kind of told them, like, you guys are confusing me by using words like preload. Like, I've got no idea what I meant to do with the clutch. So, and also I kept stalling out the pit lane, which is, not the best thing. But yeah, Marta really took me under her wing for a little bit. Obviously she had her own day to go through, and a lot of stuff of her own stuff to do as well, to keep a hold of the championship. So it was only a little bit of time, but she kind of went through what the biting point is, what they mean by preload, and how she does her race starts. And that kind of helped me a bit. But honestly, I don't remember doing a proper race start until the last round of the series, because again, there was just some basic stuff that they expected me to know, but I didn't quite know yet. So it was a bit of a learning year, and there was a lot of stuff that I probably needed to discover myself, and probably should have been told it a long time ago. But again, it's those experiences that make you a better racing driver, and it kind of amazes me how you come to the conclusion of doing the right thing, even though you have no idea what the right thing is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of goes back to not having the time, between getting the call and starting. You didn't have the time and the testing that everyone else had. You just went straight in at the deep end, even to that level. But it's like lovely that Marta did that, of course, and just shows what kind of person she is. Just to backtrack quickly though, that first round at the Red Bull Ring, it's only like a month after you've got the call and you've gone on this and you started this journey. I'm going to assume you didn't have any expectations on yourself or anything like that. It was just a case of go and just see how it goes, I guess. And it went quite well that first race.
No, 100%. In terms of expectations, I so obviously we had the first couple preseason tests in F1 Academy, and I was finishing, quite well inside the top 10. So I think my expectations were quite high after that because I knew what I could do, especially as super unexperienced. And also in the collective test at Red Bull Ring before the race, I was P2, so um, it it kind of raised my expectations a bit, and I think that's probably why I didn't have the best qualifying, but also it was my first time in the rain in qualifying, and I
Yeah.
crashed out. So it was a bit of a hectic experience, and I think I put a lot of expectations on myself to be as quick as I was in testing in the races. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case because there's so many more factors that play in terms of the race start, the warming of the tires in qualifying, finding space, track position, and also fighting with those other cars. So there was a lot to take in, and I think there was a lot more potential in me, especially in that mid part of the season. I think I struggled quite a bit with the race starts and the warming of the tires, but it was kind of like I had a lot of expectations because I knew the pace was there already. And for me, I still believe that I should have had a lot of expectations because I had the pace to be in the top five the whole season, and unfortunately, in the races, it just didn't happen because there was a lot of stuff I needed to learn.
Yeah, I guess there's as we know, there's a lot more that goes on in a race than what us from the outside looking in see, of course. And I mean, I just find it amazing that in your first race you finished sixth, your first proper single seater race, you finished sixth against all these other more experienced racers on one of the most challenging circuits in certainly in Europe, which we've seen at the weekend. Um, and you were almost disappointed with sixth. I mean, I think that's absolutely amazing. It shows how quickly you took to things. Um, and there must have been a part of you that was ecstatic with that sixth on your debut. I mean, you must have thought, actually, I mean, okay, maybe I was a bit quicker beforehand, but for your first actual race with all the things that can go on in a race, you must have thought that's pretty good.
I mean, it was nice, but also I think for me being quite critical of myself, there was a lot of things that I could have done better. For example, I think on the second last lap, I was almost in fifth, and I made an overtake. Unfortunately, I didn't defend the place that well. So there was little stuff like that that I was kind of thinking about after the race. But overall, I was quite happy, especially being a team player and everything, and my teammates coming one and two. It was quite nice to finish in sixth and being that top placing. But for me, I know there's always more to come from me. I know where my talent's at, and at the time, I had very, very strong belief in where I should be. But I think the season kind of showed me that there was so much more to just raw pace that I really need to work on. But I think raw pace wise, I know where I want to be, and my expectations always going to be there.
Yeah, which is great. Something I wanted to touch on though was the mental approach to things. I mean, just at the very next race in Valencia, you had your first like DNF. How did that affect you, or was it just a case of like these things happen? It's part of the experience, or because I know there's some people that even if it's not their fault, just because of who they are, they'll beat themselves up about it and think, "Oh God, I've let people down. I haven't finished, or whatever." What was your first reaction to that
Well,
first like, real negative? I guess.
yeah, I mean, I think coming from the upbringing that I came from, we're always very mindful of the costs of everything, and unfortunately, in racing, that's no different. There's a huge financial cost to every crash that you have, and I think unluckily for me, and luckily for other people, there's differences in what you think about when you crash, and for me, the first thought that comes into my head normally is, how much is this going to cost, and um, what have I done here? Like, um, I think, for some drivers, they can afford it. They're able to make those big mistakes, and they're able to crash and not have to worry about it so much. But I think, the cost is definitely something that comes into my head firsthand. In that case, in Valencia, thankfully there was very little damage, and also I knew that it wasn't my fault. So the other driver got the penalty, but it kind of felt a bit gutting, especially since I was going for a last lap move. I definitely didn't have the pace that I wanted to have. Unfortunately, at that track, I didn't have the pace that I had at Red Bull Ring, but it was still a move, and I wanted to finish the race nonetheless to keep that my experience going. Unfortunately, it was an opportunity cut short. So I think that was that aspect that really bothered me, was just not being in control of the outcome. And I think, as you said, it definitely can knock a bit of confidence out of you, a bit of trust out of you for the other drivers, because you kind of get a bit more concerned about what sort of character they are and what sort of racing they want to do.
Yeah, that's something that you can keep through the whole season, just in case, something just in case a situation comes up. But I think that's a great takeaway from it. There's the disappointment of it all, but you think, well, at least I know that person can make that move or whatever it might be. So you can always learn from it. But also that round you started on the front row for the first time, which must have again, learning the starts and everything, that must have been quite nerve-wracking, being on the front as well as being kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, Valencia was before Barcelona, so again, I had no
Sorry,
idea how to start. So I think the start was where I lost a lot of places, so I was quite happy to stay in position. After the second or third lap, I did let my teammate by because she was fighting for the championship. But yeah, I mean, keeping my position, I was quite proud of that, especially at a track where I didn't quite have the pace that I wanted to have. So yeah, I'd say it was an exciting experience. I always love starting on the front row. I think both times I started on the front row this season, I've had some really nice finishes and good battles. So yeah, there's not much to look down upon. Of course, I would like to have finished up there, I think, all the same. But considering the tracks where I didn't have the most pace is where I finished the best, I was quite happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And just talking about like some of the results. I mean, you've through the excuse me through the season. Obviously, we mentioned you went to the Red Bull Ring and Valencia, Barcelona. You raced at Zandvoort, raced at Monza, Paul Ricard, all these sort of legendary circuits that we all know about it. And you were running around pretty much on the edge of the top 10 the whole season, all the way through on these very different, very challenging circuits that are associated with some of the great names in the past and stuff. I mean, it must have given you confidence that you could run on pace at any of these circuits. That must have been a huge confidence boost in that first year of car racing.
Yeah, 100%. I think, well, I've ever since Red Bull Ring, I've always had the belief and knowledge that I do have the raw pace. Unfortunately, in the races, again, it was more of the case of all the I guess, alternate sort of kind of factors playing in the races as compared to free practice. In Monza, I got the fastest lap, and I think that showed my raw pace. It's definitely there. It's just I need at the right time and the right point in the weekend. In Paul Ricard, again, in the collective tests, I was P3, so I think there's a lot to show for my raw pace. It's just there's a lot of challenges to have in the races, and I would have liked to be within the top 10 in every single round, but unfortunately there was a lot of stuff that I had to learn for myself, and there was a lot of stuff that I needed to kind of take from those race weekends in order to keep pushing up. And I think accumulation of all of that happened in Austin, Texas in the last round, where I was able to really look back on all the races from the year, take everything from that, and have a really good weekend overall. 3 finishes in the top 10. I think that was very, very good. If I did done that for the whole year, and that was something that I did calculate after the season, I would have been well within the top 10 in the championship. So I think that learning from that whole year really kind of gave me a lot more confidence. And with the pace that I naturally have, I think it was all about implementing it this year. But again, in the UK, there's so many different factors at play, including the weather and the temperature on the track, different tire compound, different setups. So again, this year's very much a learning year, and there's a lot of stuff for me to take on board, a lot of stuff to try, a lot of stuff to fail at, and yeah, there's so much to learn. But I hope I know by the end of the year, I have that knowledge, and we can definitely see some good results coming.
I think that's a great line. Lots to try and lots to fail at, because you don't learn unless you fail now and again, which is fantastic. And I just want to say that with what you did in that first season in F1 Academy, especially at the end of the season, that at the Circuit of the Americas with the F1 and everything that was going on around it, to do what you did, to learn all that first season, all the traveling and everything else was absolutely exceptional.
Thank you.
And I was proper. I mean, because obviously when they said you were the youngest on the grid, naturally you kind of think, oh, I'll keep an eye on and see how she gets on. And with all the stuff that went on in the season, all that, it was mighty impressive to watch. Mighty impressive. I mean, was there any opportunity to stay either with Prema or with another team, or was it all out of your hands going into this year?
I
Or
think there's a lot of pressure on F1 Academy themselves. They're a business at the end of the day. They've got to make money. There were a couple, outside options, but I think again, racing is a big money game, unfortunately, and that's the way it will be. It's so expensive that there's no other way about it. A lot of respect for F1 Academy, Susie Wolf, and everyone that makes it happen, because honestly, it's so difficult to run a business like that, with such high money stakes at play. But yeah, I think it was kind of the factor of all that. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get the track time I wanted. I knew there was going to be a lot of outside pressure. And I think for this year, it was a collective decision from my dad, who managed me at the time. It was just about getting experience. It was about doing those same series that the girls I raced against last year did beforehand, and kind of coming back to F1 Academy hopefully in the near future, if we can find the funding, to kind of have a play at the championship. But yeah, I think there's some really good female talent around, and I think it would be a really challenging championship to compete in, especially after this year.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with the links to F1 and the direct links to the teams. I've seen your questions in the comments, folks. I'm going to get to them very shortly. Do not worry. Just want to talk very quickly about all female series. Obviously, it's quite a divisive subject between men and women, and there was like the W series and everything else like that. I know like Jade Edwards in the BTCC, she didn't want to go down that route. She thought it was further segregation, but then guests that I've had on in the past, like Sarah Moore and Sabra Cook, they've said they basically wouldn't be racing now or have the opportunity to go racing now if it wasn't for W Series, with it being a free seat, things like that. I was just wondering if W Series, if it would, like, say, come along now, was it something that you would have looked at? And just wondering what your thoughts are on that whole argument with all female series and racing against guys and all that kind of thing.
Well, I think first of all, it's a massive shame that W Series has gone bankrupt. I
Fully agree.
think for me, it would have been a massive help in my career, especially at the beginning stages where there isn't a lot of funding and you want to get that experience under your belt without too much pressure. I think having that fully covered is an amazing experience to have, and I am a little bit jealous of what Marta, Sarah Moore had, and also Bianca. I think they got the experience to race on some really nice tracks, and fully enjoy that experience, and also grow their profile. I think that's really important. Social media is a massive factor in getting sponsorship for racing, and it's something that I work on a lot with my team, because I know that the funding's never going to last forever. In fact, after this year, I don't know where the racing's going to go. It all depends on what sponsors I can find to continue my journey. But yeah, I mean, W Series was a fantastic idea, and unfortunately, it didn't quite pay off because there was no income coming in. But to kind of touch on Jade Edwards' point in terms of segregation, I think it's very true. I think in British F4, the racing style is much more aggressive than what I had last year. But I also think for up and coming racers, at my age, between the ages of 16 and 18, I think it would have been really useful to have that place to grow, to again not have that much pressure, and learn a lot. Learn those basic things like using the clutch, like learning how to overtake, and having again girls around you to help support you and teach you. I think that's really, really important, and would have been a massive help to me, and would have saved my parents from all the sacrifices that they've had to make to get me into car racing. So I have nothing negative to say about the W Series. I think it's a fantastic idea, and it's a real shame to see it kind of disappear, after 3 years. But I think if I had it now, it would have been a massive game changer for me.
Yeah, absolutely, and I do tend to agree with that. People forget, it's like, oh well, the aim was to get someone into F1 and all that. That wasn't the whole point of it. Where I think people are missing the point of it, and it's, as you say, it's people that hold the purse strings. Like family members. It's something that they don't have to worry about if there is the opportunity for W Series. And as you touched on, having girls around you. I mean, as guys, we can't perhaps understand that it's a the W Series was almost a safe space, I think, rather than having that judgment from guys and all the, looking down the historic thing of it's a male sport. In the W Series, there's much less of an issue with that, and I think that helped a lot of drivers. And it's obviously it's helped their careers, especially with like say Sabre Cook. She's well, they've just curtailed their season in the Porsches, but you've got Naomi Schiff's gone onto TV. Alice Powell's got involved with Alpine, and there's so much going on. It's not just behind the wheel, and I think, yeah, it's certainly a big loss. That's my opinion, anyway, for what it's worth. I did see a question, actually, just before we get onto F4. We're going to touch on it very, very quickly. I did see a question from Diffan Evans. Evening, Diffan. I hope you're well, mate. Thank you for tuning in. He says, was single-seaters always your goal? Did you ever look, or did you ever have the time or opportunity to look at anything else, whether it be touring cars or GT or anything like that?
Well, as I said before, I think, up until beginning of 2023, it was a given that I wouldn't be able to progress. I wouldn't be able to make a professional career in racing. So yeah, when the opportunity came, it was kind of just about, taking that opportunity, seeing where it goes. Obviously, it was in single seaters, so I think that was always the natural goal. And starting by watching Formula One, I think that's where I wanted it to go. But there's so much out there in racing. Even in single seaters, I think I would love to also race again in WEC, in IndyCar, possibly even in NASCAR. I think they're all great series.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see the diversity of those series and how different they are from one another. So I don't think there's any specific, goal to be in single seaters. I'd love to be in Formula One. That's always my, natural aspiration.
Of course.
However, I think WEC is amazing, and I think there's so many opportunities in motorsport that to make it professional is honestly the real dream. To make it my whole livelihood, to make it my career, to be able to tell my children, I'm a professional racing car driver. I think
Yeah.
that's very cool to say, and it is, what I love doing. So to be able to call that my career would be the number one priority.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm glad that you said WEC, because I think WEC's in a very good position at the moment, isn't it? It seems to be on a real upward curve after a few years where it's been perhaps not so fondly looked on, which is terrific. Very quickly, Diffan again. What do your friends think about you racing?
I mean, I actually just saw one of my friends today. They're so supportive.
Brilliant.
Meeting up with them, they always ask me how I'm doing. They always say that they've, seen these things, watched races on TV. So I think it's quite cool to finally have them connect. I had a couple friends come to my race at Brands Hatch a few months ago, and I think growing up around them, even from the age of 6, I was so into racing cars. That would kind of be my personality trait around school. I'd be the girl that races. But I feel like a lot of people didn't quite understand what that was. It was like, oh yeah, it's go-karting. Like it's just something that you turn up to. And I don't think they understood, how deeply invested I was in it, and how different it is to their perceptions. So it's nice to finally be able to use the power of social media, the power of Formula One Academy, to kind of show what it's all about. And yeah, they've never been more supportive. I think it's amazing to have, those great people around me, especially after I've left school, to kind of, always be there for me. Of course, we don't see each other as much as I would like, and definitely not as much as it would have been have I had been in school. But they've always been really, really great people, and I always see them from time to time, and we always talk about racing and, of course, everything else that's going on in our lives.
That's great. That's fantastic. And I kind of guess now, after what's happened in the last year or so, they kind of get it. They kind of get what you do and
I hope so. Yeah.
what it's all about.
Yeah. I think I think F1 Academy again has shown a big kind of like mission in terms of like just showing people what racing is and showing people that it can be doable and there is this ladder, and I think showcasing that is really important. So yeah, I think all my friends have seen that, and it's cool to finally show them what I've been through, kind of my journey and how I've gotten to where I am.
Yeah, which is great, and it's all good to have those people on board to support you as well. Question, comment from Thomas Parker. He said that that you're progressing well in F4. Absolutely, fully agree. Just want to come on to F4. Obviously, you're with one of the more one of the most respected teams in the series with like JHR Developments. Obviously, you've had experience in the car. It's a very similar car. Is it the same car? I'm not sure. F1 Academy. It's very similar. But again, I think there was a comment about this as well earlier on about yes, it was from Diffan Evans. The knowledge of UK circuits. Obviously, you've gone from karting, you've gone to all around the world with F1 Academy. Now you're back in the UK. Diffan asked, how many of the circuits had you raced on before, if any?
Only the one Zandvoort, I think.
That's
And
the
I
only
was
one.
just yeah, just touching on the car actually, even though they are the same chassis, very similar engine, they kind of are oppositely apart in some ways. Like
Right.
um, I found like it was a massive learning curve. First of all, the master cylinder in the brakes is a lot different, so
Okay.
getting used to the brakes was a massive thing, especially because they're so much more sensitive in British F4 that locking was a really big issue for me at the start, but also the dynamic of the car and how it behaves. There's a lot more to play with the setup, different tire compound as well. So again, like there's so much to learn this year. It's felt like driving a complete brand new car and also dealing with the rain conditions. I think that was a massive step outside my comfort zone, but thankfully it's all kind of come together. And in Silverstone I was in the top 10 in free practice in torrential rain, so that's not really a concern anymore. But there was so much to learn at the beginning of the year in terms of the different behaviors of the car that I would say, coming from F1 Academy, it was like starting fresh again.
Mm. See, that's fascinating to see because a lot of, sort of non-racers, of which I am one generally, they'll look at a car and say, "Well, you've gone from that car to that car. It's the same car. If you look at the, like the data sheets, it's the same chassis, whatever, but it's completely different. It depends on the circuit, the brakes, and everything else that you've touched on, which is why people shouldn't think, oh, she's come from this series and gone into this series, she'll be flying straight away because it's just not the case." You touched on the weather. You were in at the deep end. I've got on my notes almost literally. Haha. At Donington, it was absolutely throwing it down, wasn't it? It was so wet. I mean, though I spoke with one of the Legends drivers last week from the Legends series, and he said in the morning he was just like, "Nope, don't want to race in this." Did that ever come across your mind when it's because
100%.
obviously you're in open cockpit, you're going to get cold and wet and
Yeah, I mean, in free practice, we had quite similar conditions, and honestly, the visibility was not there. We were complaining everywhere. I was on the verge of not being able to drive, and then you wake up Sunday morning. I'm actually staying, at all the races in the caravan that we've used for go karting.
wow.
So, we again, it's another piece of equipment that we brought through, and it means that we save the money on the hotel rooms, which is quite nice. But yeah, I remember hearing the rain just absolutely like slamming onto the caravan like ceiling. Open up the door slams right open, the winds are out, and I'm like, yep, this is a lot worse than free practice. I don't think we're driving for another few hours. So went to the team truck, and we just stayed there. Hoped that we'd get the races. And unfortunately, we waited all day. We only got one race, but
Yeah.
it was well worth the wait. And again, it's more experience in the bag. But I love Donington, and for me, it was a bit disappointment not to qualify as high as I know the pace is. But again, it's one of those learning curves of being able to manage those tires. It's a very difficult compound this year. They peak quite early, so it is really about prioritizing the warm up and getting the most out of them early, which is something that I really need to work on.
Yeah, fantastic. Um, just quickly, this is going to tie in here. Again, there's a question from where are we from? Difan. He said, how difficult have you found it to get sponsors on board? This is a problem all across the board, of course. How difficult have you found it to get sponsors on board to sponsor you? And has being on the British Touring Car Championship support bill for a lot of the rounds and the TV exposure that it brings, has that made it slightly easier, perhaps, to get some sponsors on board? And I know it's very difficult for everyone. But
Well, I'd say last year was a lot easier. Being on the F1 package obviously is a bit of a high profile.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and I'd actually say also that being a female means that it's much harder to get sponsorship. And the way I'll explain it is that I think historically and even presently, motorsport is still seen as a male viewed sport. Like
yeah,
you don't normally see, gatherings of girls watching the Formula One. What I'd say up until this year.
yeah,
So a lot of female brands are very, I'd say, cautious about entering the industry just because there hasn't been much of a track record. No um, female brands have really sponsored in Formula One. In fact, I can't think of a single one that's
no,
predominantly female
no,
going and sponsoring an F1 team. So again, there's a lot of unknowns, and I think it makes female brands very tentative to go into the industry, especially at our level, Formula 4 level. Whilst, I think it'd be very difficult to get Sephora on board to sponsor a Formula One car. But if you got a brand, let's say like Callaway or Titleist, like Gulf, I think that would be, a no-brainer if they had the funds and
yeah,
great marketing. So
yeah,
it's just about raising awareness, I think, to the fact that girls can compete and they can do a really, really good job at PR. I think we can do a much better job than I'd say equivalent guys. Um,
absolutely.
I believe that we're much better spoken. I believe that in terms of social media, we take care of our image very well. But it's unfortunate that we face this additional challenge of not being able to market the brands that we like to use. So I'd say it has been super, super difficult, even with having tons of followers on Instagram, tons of people following my story and being influenced by me. It has been a massive challenge to get sponsorship. And unfortunately, my parents are still paying for a lot of the racing. And it's not something that's sustainable. But I'm really thankful to have, a couple great sponsors believe in me and bring me on board, especially having a perfume brand on board, I think is very powerful. Again, we're entering an industry that's very male dominated, yet still marketing towards females. And I think Katie, who runs the brand, is absolutely amazing and true inspiration to me for taking those risks and also supporting fellow females.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw you put something out on socials just before we came on, with the perfume and everything. And I think that's a great point. I mean, a lot of people, mainly guys, say, oh, they just look at the person who's trying to get sponsorship rather than the brands that person might be targeting. And if they're thinking, and as you say, if they're thinking, well, there's been no presence for anything like that in motorsport, it's a bit of a risk. And I think we need to say a huge well done to Catherine Legg this year for the Indy 500. She got eyes, lips, and face on, and her popularity just went through the roof. So it just goes to show that if someone can take a chance on it, or not even take a chance, someone can just get fully invested in it, then there's definitely gains to be made for everyone involved, isn't there? So fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
100%.
Fingers crossed that can happen. Because everyone talks about the inclusivity, and that doesn't just stop at races; it stops at everyone through the paddock. It stops at it continues through to sponsors and backers and media and everything else. And we all need to get on board, in my book. No, that's great. Thank you for the question, guys, as well. Just very quickly, I need to touch on Snetterton because we all saw what happened. It was on the BTCC support. The rain came in right in the middle of the F4 race, and it didn't look fun. It looked absolutely horrendous. I mean, that must have been the worst that you've driven in.
Yeah, in some ways it was worse, but also I think it was the best. I think it showcased my ability to control the car in very difficult positions and to know where the grip's at. Actually, in the space of 2 laps, well, actually 2 corners, I made up 4 positions.
Mm.
You know, by being smart, I went for a move. The other driver completely, I think misjudged how rainy it was and ran off the track whilst I'd already overtaken them. and yeah, there was a bunch of cars that were braking early, so I just decided to send it into T2 and get the positions back. But it did mean that by the time the red flag went out, I lost those positions because they put the positions back to the where the lap was before. But it would
Yeah,
have been my best finish in the series had it not been red flagged that lap and the next lap. So it was a bit unfortunate, but I think it proved to myself, improved, my kind of abilities to handle the car in very tricky conditions, even with no experience going slicks in the wet.
yeah, absolutely. And you say it's so you kind of learn at the sharp end, and it's a shame that the positions were done on countback, but it's a mere technicality. We all saw the racing, and that's the main bit. Um, so very quickly going forward. I mean, you've oh yeah, Thruxton. Now, this is the nearest circuit to me. It's just down the road here. Fastest circuit in the UK. How did you find it round Thruxton? Because I've done a couple of track days there, and I'm not a racer, and I absolutely love it. It's so quick.
Oh, it was absolutely great. I really like the track. I think it's a great track. Unfortunately, I felt like I struggled quite a bit. Just overthinking a lot about it. I think there was a lot of things that I was thinking about that didn't necessarily affect my driving, but were all the more important, to how I performed that weekend. But I think the pace was very much there. Unfortunately, I just didn't qualify quite where I wanted to be. Again, an issue with my warming of the tires and making the most of the tire peak. But again, to be honest, that it's a testament to how close the whole grid was. To be that close every single race, I think from the first round in qualifying is amazing. So I think it's definitely a hard field out there this year, and there's a lot of gains that I can make. So I don't see any reason why I can't be further up, in the next half of the season once I put everything together. Being that close without putting everything together is still quite good for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're saying, you're still learning the circuit, you're still learning the racing and everything, and as you say, to be that close, it's yeah, as I said, it is mighty impressive, and I've been following you for a while. And obviously that's your hopes for the rest of the season, just to put it all together, and just get as far up as you can, I guess.
Well, I think it's just about, yeah, again, putting everything that I've learned in this first half of the season together. Kind of trusting myself. I feel like that's again the thing that us females do, is that sometimes we go back and forth and overthink a lot of things. Especially in our abilities, we like to be very, I'd say, more humble. So in the team that's trying to make us do well, me and my other female teammates just be a bit more aggressive, be a bit more arrogant, and have that belief, because in the data and everything that the team's seen, there's no reason why I can't be up there, in the top 10. So, yeah, it's about going in with a lot of confidence and maybe just being a bit aggressive and getting my shoulders out a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, all the people that are watching and are saying, "Oh, and saying whatever they're saying, you're out there doing it, and you could kick the backsides of anyone else who's watching." So, so absolutely, yeah, that confidence, and just get out there and do it. 'Cause it'd be great to see. Real quickly, you touched on like some of your female like colleagues and competitors. There's four young ladies on the in F4 this year. Obviously, there's you, there's Abby Pulling, there's Nina Gademan, excuse me, and Ella Lloyd. And I guess you guys all kind of like bounce off each other, and even though you're in different teams, um, like girls against the world type thing, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's the first for British F4. It's really, really nice to see so many girls competing in Formula 4. Um, Obviously, there's a huge band of experience. Abby's done the series twice already and done Janetta's before. Ella's first year in single seaters, but also again done 2 years of Janetta's, so she knows the track quite well. She's really good to learn off of, and get those tips from her about the tracks. And then also there's Nina, who I think is in a bit more similar situation to me, where quite new to the series, new to the tracks, but she also, has good experience in GTs and definitely knows how to get her elbows out in the racing, from her sim racing experience. So there's so much to learn from all of the girls. I think we're all very, very relatively doing well. You know, I had a look at the results from our test at Zandvoort, and comparing it to the results of the test from Formula One Academy in Zandvoort, I think all four of us would be very high up there. So I think, you know, racing in one of the most competitive series in the world definitely doesn't do us justice to where we could be in I'd say an all female series. So I think it's good to have, you know, that high level of competition and to really prove it. You know, at Silverstone, I think Carrie Schreiner joined the grid for the first
Yeah,
time this year, and yeah, we really showed how much difference there is in pace, and I think, you know, all four of us can do really, really well.
yeah, absolutely. You know, you guys are all on pace. And just a word on like Carrie, she came on I think back end of last year, and yeah, she's steely. You can see it in her eyes. She's got that. You're
Definitely
not
got
going to miss her.
that yes, more self belief, I think, than a
Yeah,
lot of drivers. She's very confident, and I do have a lot of respect for her. I think she's, you know, done some really, really good stuff in GTs. She's
yeah,
struggling a bit in the single seater stuff, but I think she's a great role model to look up to, especially being, you know, one of the eldest in F1 Academy last year. She was always kind of like, you know, that the you know, the wise one.
yeah, absolutely. No, and it's great. It's great to see that there's so many. You know, yeah, there's like so many girls going out to different series and racing, and absolutely more than holding their own and winning as Abby's proved as well, which is fantastic. Right, okay. Just gonna grab a couple of questions from here, then we'll do a couple of fun ones, and then we'll let you go and have a relax before you head off to Zandvoort next week. One thing there was where are we? Do-do-do. Okay, this is one of the questions that I was going to ask, but I'm going to give credit to Katie Eames for this one for her question. If you could race in any car outside of F1, that's a good one. What would it be? Is there one car that you look at and you think, oh yeah, that one?
I love to race in IndyCar, but I also really love to race the Cadillac hypercar. I think
Yes.
that's it sounds absolutely amazing. It looks
Mm.
really, really cool, and having North American roots, I'd love to race for a North American team.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I think was it Jack Aiken was in the Cadillac, I think, at Le Mans. I spoke with Jack.
Yeah,
He absolutely loves it. Yeah, you can see him smiling every time he
it
talks
looks
about
like such a racy car, and yeah, to have such a historical manufacturer behind it, I think, yeah, it would be a dream to race for them.
it. Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Another question from Katie that again I was going to ask, but Katie, this is all yours. Thank you. If you could race in any championship outside of Formula One or whatever it be, what would it be? If you could pick one outside of F1, which would be the one that you think?
Um, I think, you know, there's so many championships that I'd love to race in. I think, honestly, it's me who's living the dream. It's, you know, I love racing no matter what it is. I would love to race in any sort of championship that you know, gives me joy and makes me able to call myself a professional racing driver and call it my livelihood, call it my job. But I'd say if there was one series that I could race in for the rest of my life that's not Formula One, it would 100% be WEC. I think, you know, it's historic. I'd love to race in the Le Mans every year. I think it's a team sport as well, and I love working with people and winning together. I think that's very important. Even Formula cars, you know, you win with your team, and it makes it feel all the better. But I think also winning with other drivers makes it really feel quite unique and quite cool.
Yeah, fantastic. And I guess with the endurance side of it, you know, you're all pulling together for for the duration of the race, which is great to see. Okay, good stuff. Okay, quickly, quick shout out to John Kane. He is one of the Orange Army, one of the marshals without whom we cannot go racing. Huge thumbs up and respect and love to those guys. He said, hi, Rich. Is Chloe coming to Knock Hill and Croft with the with F4? I don't think you do Croft. Oh, do you do Croft? I can't remember. But yeah, are you heading up to Knock Hill because John is a marshal at Knock Hill?
Oh, amazing! So I'll be seeing you later this year, John. I think, yeah, we're coming in August, so we'll be there at Knockhill. Unfortunately, we're not at Croft. I
Mm.
think we're doing Zandvoort instead, but yeah, we'll definitely be there up at Knockhill. I think I've heard that the crowds are amazing, so I can't wait to be there and, you know, ride the roller coaster again.
Yeah, it's a fantastic circuit. We absolutely love it. Everything about Croft. My only thing is it's too far from where I live. That's the only problem. I'd love it to be on the doorstep. It's a great place. But huge thanks to you, John, and Tori the Marshals as well. Fantastic. Okay, last couple of questions before we shoot off. And there's a lovely comment which I'm going to finish with. I think we've touched on this before. Who was your hero, your racing hero growing up?
My racing hero, I think it's quite easy to see. It was Lewis, 100%. I think as again W Series came into play, it started to publicise more females doing their bit in motorsports. So I definitely looked up quite a bit to Jamie. I think she's done a really good job, especially this year in Indy Next. What she's doing is amazing, and I hope to see her, go either to IndyCar or down the F2, F1 route. I think that would be a massive thing for our sport. But also Abby Pulling, actually, even though I raced with her these last 2 years, I think before in karting, actually before we decided to go into British Karting Championships, we would watch the Super One and see her. And I think it was always something, a dream of mine to kind of be in that position at the front of a British Karting Championship event. And funnily enough, it happened. So I'd also say that I'm following in her footsteps in a way. And obviously, I think she's quite an inspiration what she's doing presently.
Yeah, absolutely. Abby is great. Very, very impressive. She's impressed a lot of people as well, which is no surprise at all. Okay, quick one. What's a favourite circuit that you've driven on? And I think Katie also asked, is there one that you'd like to drive on?
Favorite circuit that I've driven on actually is Red Bull Ring. I think I really enjoyed the surroundings. I love mountains. I love the Alps. I say to everyone, if I had one place to live for the rest of my life, it'd be on a hut in the middle of nowhere on top of a mountain. So I think naturally I really enjoyed Red Bull Ring. I love Austria. And yeah, the track's really great. I think it's really flowing, and of course I was fast there, so that makes it all the better.
That helps.
I'd also say Circuit of the Americas was amazing. It was really unique going up that hill. It's steeper than you think. So yeah, it was definitely one of my favorites. I'd say those two are up there as one of the top two that I've driven this, so far. One that I'd love to drive on in the future would probably be, I'd say Shanghai and also Gilles Villeneuve, just because they're my home Grand Prix circuits in China and Canada. And I've never been to China before, so I'd love to go there and race as well. It's definitely a dream of mine to go there.
That's great, and I think you're one of the first people to say the Montreal circuit, and I think more people should say it. I think it's a great circuit because it's still fast, it's still quick, and it's still kind of old school.
I mean, they carry massive high speeds.
Yeah.
Through what's a street circuit really, with walls surrounding you everywhere you go. And I think it's definitely a cool challenge that I'd love to take on somewhere in the near future.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, one last one. When you're not racing and doing things very quickly and hurtling around circuits, what do you do in your normal life? What are your interests when you're not?
I'd say anything that I do, I want to be the best at. So I'd say I have a lot of collective interests. So I kind of go off the ones that I'm really focusing on now. Main thing that I can think about is sim racing. I think that's been a big aspect of my life in the last 6 months. I got a sim earlier this year to help me with the training, and it's something that I really taken to. I think I've actually gone fairly all right at it, considering I have started quite late. I'd say cycling is a massive thing that I really enjoy. I've got a partner in Canyon Bikes. I'm really grateful for their support. And they're doing great things, I think, in the cycling world, and it's been amazing to be on board with them and discover all the things. I've been watching the Tour de France quite closely. I still need to catch up with the highlights from the last race, but there's a lot of parallels in that sport to that, and I'm lucky enough to live quite close to the Kent Hills, so I've been doing a lot in this nice sunny weather that we've got so far, and yeah, I've been really enjoying that. But the final thing I'd love to say is music. I think music is a massive aspect of my life. I love to play music. I've actually, a funny fact about me is I play quite a few musical instruments. I've learned how to play, I think, around 8. So it's just something that I love to pick up and love to do in my spare time. I listen to a nice song and I want to go learn it, and I think it makes it a cool challenge to do, in your spare time when you're not racing.
That's amazing. 8. My goodness, that's amazing. Hang on. I'm going to lean over here. Hang on. I've stopped at 1. This is my baby here. This is my baby. That's my
Oh,
baby.
that's beautiful.
That's mine. Yeah, the old Les Paul. It's a copy. It isn't a real one. It isn't a real Gibson Les Paul, unfortunately. But yeah, that's my little.
Oh, it looks amazing.
That's my little.
I've got like a Strat, but it's just I think it's like a Yamaha one, a stock Yamaha one.
That's exactly what I started on. But yeah, but in case anyone's, I'm actually going to a gig on Friday. I'm going to go and see the Mallet Street Preachers in Suede in Cardiff. And that's the reason for the white and black guitar. It's this James Dean Bradford from the Manics. But no, that's cool. Yeah, music absolutely brilliant. But no, that's great. You've got so much stuff going on. Lovely stuff. Well, I think that's a great place to finish. I just wanted to read out one comment, which is a lovely way to end. And again, it's from Katie Eames. Katie is going to start this evening. She said, "Chloe, you're an awesome driver and another great role model for girls wanting to race."
Oh, amazing. That's what I aspire to be. As long as well as my aspirations to make it professional in the world of motorsport, I think it's also important to give back and also, provide that pathway for girls coming through the sport who don't know quite where to go. I think for me and my dad, it was quite unknown for us. We're outsiders to the world of motorsport. That's quite notorious for being known, as quite closed doors. So if I'm able to give back to that community, near where I grew up, and also to the rental cars community, and bring more girls up the ladder, once to make it professional, hopefully, that would be a massive job done in my life, I think, and it would let me, feel very accomplished.
That's great, and you've certainly done it already, and obviously we certainly hope you get the opportunities to continue to do that. But there's lots of love in the comments. People saying, everyone's saying good luck for the rest of the season. Obviously, we wish you all the best for Zandvoort for the rest of the season, and I'm sure there'll be me and a few other, well, plenty of others on here tracking your progress in future wherever it may take you. So we wish you all the very best with it, of course.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be on here, and thank you everyone for the kind comments, and yeah, I can't wait for the rest of the season and to bring some good results through the door.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know there's a lot of British touring car fans on here. So firstly, come and join us on Thursday. We've got Stephen Jelly coming on for a chat, ex-touring car driver. But also F4 is on the BT support package. So if you are trackside, you know who to support now in F4. So thank you very much, everyone. Of course, biggest thanks to you, Chloe. Thank you very much for coming on. And we'll see everyone very, very soon. Good night, all.